In a tent city in northwest Syria, an entire generation born into war. Children who have only known life in the narrow lanes of this camp and who learn to live with the bare minimum. At the Atta al-Rama camp, Khalid Ahmed Haj feeds his children what little he can. They dip bread in oil and thyme, the 6 of them eating from a single small plate. They have not had meat, fruit, or vegetables for months.
There are no job opportunities for us to work. There is nothing. Even bread and thyme we can barely buy. My children are malnourished. My baby needs food, milk, fruits, and protein.
Haj says the closure of the UN-operated border crossing at Bab al-Hawa on the Turkish border will block aid to his camp. That, he says, amounts to a death sentence.
The closure of the crossing will cause us to suffocate and starve to death. The camps depend only on UN aid, and closing the crossing means killing us.
Next door, Mohammed Hasram tries to cool his tent with water. It's over 100 degrees on most summer days. His youngest child can't bear it.
There's little water here. We use some of it to cool the tent. Look at this dilapidated tent and at our conditions. The picture speaks louder than words.
Hasram came here after fleeing Homs. Once known as the capital of the Syrian revolution, Homs has long been reduced to rubble by the regime of Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad. Today, Hasram faces another battle, keeping his children alive.
No one looks at our situation and no one helps. We depend on UN aid. We used to get some aid, but now it's completely cut off. If it continues to be stopped, life here will stop. This is a food war on us.
The Bab al-Hawa crossing was the last remaining humanitarian corridor between Turkey and the rebel-held Idlib province. It closed earlier this month after Russia vetoed a UN Security Council resolution, a move that angered many Syrians in the region.
Syrian regime and Russians have used the food weapon for years against civilians. We want to say for the whole world that you shouldn't wait till seeing people dying out of hunger, out of lack of food and any humanitarian assistance. People in northwest Syria have been suffering for years.
Now the Syrian regime wants to control aid delivery into these rebel-held territories through Damascus. Charles Lister is a senior fellow and director of the Syria and Countering Terrorism and Extremism programs at the Middle East Institute.
The Syrian regime, who had spent 12 years besieging, gassing and killing hundreds of thousands of Syrians, now gets to claim to the international community that it's willing to provide humanitarian access. It is willing to open a border crossing. The rate of humanitarian aid provision into northwestern Syria will unquestionably collapse significantly.
Lister said an average of 12,000 aid trucks had passed through the UN crossing each year. But on the Assad-controlled routes, since 2021, only a total of 152 trucks have delivered aid, an average of only 74 a year.
The regime would, in most cases, simply refuse to allow the aid in at all. And all across Syria, over the past 12 years, there have been towns and cities where people have been eating grass, have been eating mud, in desperation because they have no aid. On the few occasions in those historical cases where the regime did allow small amounts of aid in, they were then in the practice whereby the Syrian regime would, for example, they put shards of glass inside shipments of flour, they put bird feces inside baby formula.
Health officials say the crossing's closure will have a devastating effect on the healthcare system. It's already crippled by February's twin earthquakes that destroyed medical facilities, killed medical staff, and damaged equipment that has yet to be replaced. Now, with the border crossing closed, more than half of northwest Syria's remaining hospitals are at risk of shutting down. Dr. Zuhair Karat is head of the Idlib Health Directorate.
The cessation of aid entry will lead to great damage to the health sector and will lead to the closure of these facilities. We are heading for a major health disaster.
That would compound an already dire humanitarian crisis. And until the international community comes up with a solution, millions of displaced Syrians are looking toward a grim future. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm John Yang.